We'd love to help, Mom, but the kids have soccer. That's what my son David said when I called him from my hospital bed, still groggy from anesthesia, asking if someone could pick me up after my hip replacement surgery. Not, how did the operation go? Not, are you in pain? Just that my recovery was an inconvenience that didn't fit into their weekend sports schedule. So I healed alone, slow, careful, counting each step like precious coins. And while I sat in that empty house, unable to reach my own medicine cabinet, I planned something that would teach my children exactly what it feels like to be abandoned when you need family most. The morning I came home from the hospital, I couldn't even open a jar of applesauce. My hands shook from the medication, my hips screamed with every movement, and the walker they'd given me felt like a cage on wheels. I had to use a reacher tool to get my pills from the kitchen counter, and even then I nearly fell trying to fill a glass of water. The silence in that house wasn't peaceful. It was accusing. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me that I was alone. Every tick of the clock marked another minute that my phone didn't ring. I'm Margaret Ellen Whitmore, and at 68 years old, I thought I knew what loneliness felt like. I was wrong. There's regular loneliness, and then there's the kind that settles into your bones when your own children treat your medical emergency like a minor scheduling conflict. What my 3 adult children did to me during the 6 weeks I was recovering from major surgery will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. But what I did back? Well, let's just say that when you spend decades raising ungrateful children, you learn exactly which buttons to push to make them understand what they've lost. This all started 3 months before my surgery, when I began having severe pain in my right hip. At first, I thought it was just arthritis acting up, something that comes with the territory when you're pushing 70. But the pain got worse and worse until I could barely walk from my bedroom to the kitchen without stopping to rest. My doctor, Dr. Peterson, took one look at my x-rays and shook his head. "Margaret, that hip joint is completely worn out. You need a full replacement, and the sooner the better. If you wait much longer, you're going to end up with a fracture that could put you in a wheelchair permanently." I was terrified. I'd never had major surgery before, just my appendix out when I was 25 and a few minor procedures over the years. The thought of being cut open, having my bones sawed apart and replaced with metal and plastic, made me feel sick to my stomach. But Dr. Peterson assured me it was routine. "You'll be walking again within a week, back to normal activities in 6 weeks. The key is having good support during your recovery. You'll need someone to help you with daily activities for at least the first 2 weeks." That's when I made my first mistake. I assumed my children would step up. I called David first. He's my oldest, 44 years old, married to Susan, with 2 kids aged 12 and 14. David works in middle management at an insurance company, lives about 20 minutes away in a nice suburban house with a 3-car garage. We'd always been close when he was growing up. He was my little helper, always eager to please, always telling me I was the best mom in the world. "Hi, honey. It's Mom. I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, Mom, but can you make it quick? I'm driving to Tyler's soccer practice, and Susan's already at Madison's volleyball game." I explained about the hip replacement, the surgery date, the recovery time I'd need help. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Wow, Mom, that's a lot. When did you say this was happening?" 2 weeks from Friday. Dr. Peterson says I'll be in the hospital for 3 days, then I'll need help at home for a couple of weeks while I learn to use the walker and build up my strength." Another pause, then, "Gosh, Mom, that's really tough timing. Tyler's got soccer playoffs that weekend, and Madison has a big volleyball tournament. Susan's been planning the team dinner for months. Plus, my boss just announced we're doing a major client presentation that week, and I can't really take time off right now." "David, I'm not asking you to take time off work. I just need someone to pick me up from the hospital and maybe check on me for the first few days." "Well, couldn't you just take an Uber home and maybe hire a nurse or something for the first week?"
I felt like he'd slap me. David, this is major surgery. I'm going to be on pain medication, using a walker, unable to drive or even shower by myself for the first few days. I need family support, not hired strangers. Look, Mom, I hear what you're saying, but we've got commitments. The kids have been working all season for these playoffs. We can't just abandon them now. But you can abandon me? It's not like that, Mom. You'll be fine. You're tough. And once things settle down with the kids' sports, we'll definitely come visit. I hung up feeling nauseous. But I told myself maybe David was just overwhelmed. I'd try my daughter, Jennifer. Jennifer is my middle child, 41 years old, works as a marketing director for a tech company. She's single, no kids, always seemed like the most responsible of my 3 children. Surely she'd understand the seriousness of the situation.
That's encouraging, honey. But I'm still going to need help during the recovery, especially the first couple of weeks. Of course, of course. Have you looked into those assisted living places? Not permanently, obviously, but some of them offer short-term recovery stays. It might be perfect for this situation. Jennifer, I don't want to go to a facility. I want to recover in my own home, with my family helping me. I totally get that, Mom. But here's the thing. I just got promoted to senior director, and they're sending me to a conference in San Francisco that exact week. It's a huge opportunity. I'll be presenting our new product line to major clients. I literally cannot miss it. What about before the conference or after? Well, before the conference, I'll be preparing day and night. And after, honestly, Mom, I'll probably be exhausted and need to decompress. Plus, I'm not really good with medical stuff. You know how I get queasy around blood and bandages. I was starting to see a pattern, but I still had one more child to call. My youngest, Michael, who was 38, married to Rachel with 3 young kids under the age of 8. Michael had always been my baby, and even as an adult, he still called me every Sunday and sent me pictures of the grandkids. "Hey, Mom, perfect timing. I just got the kids down for naps. What's up?" I went through the whole explanation again. Michael was quiet for a long time. "Mom, I'm really sorry you're going through this. Hip surgery sounds intense." "It is, sweetheart. And I'm scared about being alone during the recovery. I wish I could help, Mom, I really do. But Rachel and I are barely keeping our heads above water as it is. The baby's still not sleeping through the night, Emma's starting kindergarten, and little Jake has been having behavioral issues at preschool. Rachel's on the verge of a breakdown, and I'm working 60-hour weeks trying to make partner at the firm. Michael, I raised 3 children while working full-time and taking care of your grandmother. I know how hard it is, but sometimes family has to come first. I know, Mom, and I feel terrible about this, but we literally don't have any bandwidth right now. Plus, our house is chaos. Crying babies, screaming toddlers, toys everywhere. It wouldn't be a good environment for someone recovering from surgery. So what am I supposed to do? Maybe this is a good time to think about moving into one of those senior communities, where they have help available when you need it. And there it was. All 3 of my children, the people I had sacrificed everything for, had essentially told me I was on my own. They could find time for soccer games and business conferences and their own busy lives, but their mother's major surgery was just an inconvenience to be managed. That night, I sat in my living room, looking at the family photos covering every surface. Pictures of birthday parties I'd planned, Christmas mornings I'd made magical, soccer games and school plays I never missed. Pictures of me holding each of my children as babies, teaching them to ride bikes, helping with homework, cheering at their graduations. I had given these children everything. When David wanted to play Little League, I worked extra shifts at the department store to pay for his equipment and drove him to every practice. When Jennifer wanted to take dance lessons, I sacrificed my own needs to pay for classes and costumes. When Michael struggled in school, I spent hours every night helping him with homework. When my husband died suddenly of a heart attack 12 years ago, leaving me alone at 56, I could have remarried. I had opportunities, but I focused on being there for my children, helping them through their own grief, supporting them as they built their adult lives. I had been the perfect mother, always available, always supportive, always putting their needs before my own. And now, when I needed them for the first time in decades, they couldn't be bothered. But here's what my children didn't know about their devoted mother. I hadn't spent 43 years working in human resources without learning a thing or two about leverage, consequences, and strategic planning. And I hadn't raised 3 children without understanding exactly how to make them suffer for their selfishness. The surgery was scheduled for a Friday morning. Thursday night, I made one last attempt to reach out to my children. I sent a group text to all of them. Surgery is tomorrow at 8 a.m. Still hoping one of you might be able to pick me up on Sunday when I'm discharged. Love, Mom. David's response came within 5 minutes. Sorry, Mom. Tyler's championship game is Sunday afternoon. Can't miss it. You understand. Jennifer replied an hour later. Flying to San Francisco Sunday morning. Maybe next time plan the surgery when it's more convenient for everyone. Michael didn't respond at all. That night, lying in my bed, knowing it would be weeks before I could sleep comfortably again, I made some decisions that would change my relationship with my children forever. I went into surgery alone. I woke up alone. I spent 3 days in the hospital alone, watching other patients receive visits from their families, while my room remained empty, except for the nurses checking on me. On Sunday morning, the discharge nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, asked me who was picking me up. I'm taking a taxi, I told her. Honey, you just had major surgery. Don't you have any family who can help you get home? I have 3 children, I said. They're all very busy. Patricia looked at me with such pity that I wanted to cry. But I didn't cry. I was done crying over my ungrateful children. The taxi driver helped me into my house and even carried my small overnight bag to the bedroom. I tipped him $50, more than I could afford, because his 5 minutes of kindness meant more to me than anything my own children had done in months. The first week home was hell. Everything hurt. The pain medication made me dizzy and nauseous. I couldn't shower without a special chair. I couldn't reach anything in my upper kitchen cabinets. I couldn't carry a cup of coffee from the kitchen to the living room without stopping to rest. I fell twice, once trying to get out of bed in the middle of the night, and once reaching for a book on a high shelf. Both times I lay on the floor for several minutes, terrified that I had re-injured myself, before slowly and painfully getting back up. My phone sat silent. No calls, no texts, no visits. The only human contact I had was with the physical therapist who came twice a week, and even she commented on how unusual it was for her to never see any family members during a patient's recovery. Usually I have to work around spouses and children who want to hover and help, she said. It's actually kind of nice to work with someone so independent. Independent. That's what she called it. I called it abandoned. But during those long, painful, solitary days, I wasn't just healing physically. I was planning. And what I was planning would make my children understand exactly what it felt like to be discarded by the people who were supposed to love you most. My first move was financial. For years, I had been helping my children in ways they had come to take for granted. David and Susan's mortgage was in my name because they couldn't qualify for the loan amount they wanted on their own income. I was the co-signer, and I had been making half the payments for 3 years to help them afford their dream house. Jennifer's car lease was under my name and credit, with me covering the monthly payments as a gift to help her build her career. I had also co-signed for her credit cards when she was starting out, and she still owed thousands of dollars that I had been quietly paying the minimum payments on. Michael and Rachel's daycare costs were enormous, and I had been contributing $800 a month to help them manage. I had also set up college funds for all my grandchildren, contributing $200 per month to each account. In total, I was spending nearly $4,000 a month helping my adult children with expenses they couldn't manage on their own. Money that came out of my retirement savings and Social Security. But here's the thing about financial help. It only continues as long as the giver chooses to give it. 2 weeks after my surgery, when I was finally able to sit at my computer for longer periods, I started making calls. I called the mortgage company first. This is Margaret Whitmore. I'm a co-signer on a mortgage account, and I need to remove myself from the loan immediately. Mrs. Whitmore, removing a co-signer from an active mortgage account requires either refinancing the loan in the primary borrower's name only or paying off the balance in full. Would you like me to send the necessary paperwork to initiate that process? Yes, please. And I'll need this processed as quickly as possible. I called the car dealership next. I need to terminate a lease agreement immediately due to non-payment. Ma'am, the account shows all payments are current. That's because I've been making the payments. As of today, I'm no longer responsible for this lease. The primary lessee will need to take over payments immediately, or you can repossess the vehicle. I called the daycare where Michael's children attended. This is Margaret Whitmore. I've been making partial payments for the Henderson account. As of the end of this month, I'll no longer be contributing to their fees. One by one, I systematically removed every bit of financial support I had been providing. I also closed the college savings accounts and transferred the money into a new account that only I controlled. But cutting off the money was just the beginning. My second move was legal. I called my attorney, Harold Brennan, whom I'd known for 20 years. Harold, I need to make some significant changes to my will and estate planning. Of course, Margaret. What kind of changes are we talking about? I want to remove my children as beneficiaries and executors. I want to leave everything to charity instead. There was a pause. Margaret, that's a very significant decision. May I ask what's prompted this change? I told Harold everything. The surgery, their refusal to help, the weeks of isolation and pain. He listened without interrupting. Margaret, I'm not going to try to talk you out of this, but I want to make sure you've thought it through completely. Your estate is worth approximately $1.8 million between your house, investments, and savings. That's a substantial inheritance you'd be taking away from your children. I told you, Harold, they made their choice when they decided soccer games were more important than their mother's surgery. Now I'm making mine. All right, let's draft a new will. But I'm going to suggest we also create some documentation about why you're making this change, in case anyone tries to contest it later. Harold helped me create a detailed letter explaining my decision, including specific examples of my children's neglect and abandonment during my recovery. We also documented all the financial support I had been providing and was now withdrawing. But the will change was still just setting the stage for the real revenge. My third move was social. I had always been active in our community: church committees, neighborhood association, book club, volunteer work at the local hospital. People knew me as a devoted mother and grandmother, always talking about my successful children and beautiful grandchildren. Now I had a different story to tell. At church the following Sunday, my first time out since the surgery, people naturally asked how I was feeling and how my recovery was going. I'm healing slowly. It's been challenging doing it all alone, but I'm managing. Alone? Where are your children? I thought David lived nearby. Oh, he does. About 20 minutes away. But they've been very busy with the children's sports activities. Soccer playoffs, you know. Mrs. Patterson's expression changed. Sports activities? Margaret, you just had major surgery. I know.
but the children have priorities, and I respect that. Word spread quickly through our small community. At the grocery store, the pharmacy, the post office, everywhere I went, people asked about my recovery and were shocked to learn I had gone through it without family support. I wasn't dramatic about it. I didn't cry or complain. I just stated the facts calmly and let people draw their own conclusions. And the conclusions they drew were devastating to my children's reputations. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived next door to David and Susan, began giving them cold looks when she saw them in their yard. Mr. Thompson, from the hardware store, who had known Jennifer since she was a child, pointedly asked her, when she ran into him at the bank, "How's your mother doing after her surgery? I heard she had to manage her recovery all by herself."
Michael's family attended the same church we did, and suddenly other parents were asking Rachel pointed questions about how my recovery was going and whether Michael had been able to help me. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. My fourth move was personal, and it was the most satisfying of all. I waited until I was 6 weeks post-surgery, walking without the walker and feeling strong enough to execute my plan. Then I sent identical letters to all 3 of my children. Dear David, Jennifer, Michael, by now you may have heard that I've made some changes to my financial arrangements and estate planning. I wanted you to hear the details directly from me. As of this month, I have removed myself as co-signer from David's mortgage. The bank requires the loan to be refinanced in David and Susan's names only within 30 days, or the house will go into foreclosure proceedings. I have terminated the car lease for Jennifer's vehicle. The dealership will contact you about either taking over payments or returning the car. I have stopped contributing to Michael and Rachel's daycare expenses. The daycare will expect full payment from you going forward. I have also closed all the grandchildren's college funds and redirected those investments to the St. Mary's Hospital Recovery Program for elderly patients who have no family support during their medical treatment. Additionally, I have rewritten my will. My house, investments, and savings will now be left entirely to charitable organizations that support senior citizens who have been abandoned by their families. Harold Brennan, my attorney, has all the documentation about why I made this decision. You each made it very clear during my hip replacement surgery that your lives are too busy and important to make room for your mother's needs. I have decided to respect that choice and remove myself as a burden from your busy schedules permanently. Do not contact me to discuss this decision. Do not visit my house. Do not expect birthday cards, Christmas gifts, or any other acknowledgement of family occasions. You wanted to be independent from your mother's needs, and now you are completely independent. I will be moving forward with my life surrounded by people who value my presence and want to spend time with me. I suggest you do the same. Margaret Whittemore. I mailed those letters on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my phone was ringing constantly. David called first, his voice panicked. "Mom, what the hell is this letter? You can't just remove yourself from my mortgage. Susan and I can't qualify for a refinance on our own. We'll lose the house." David, you should have thought about that before you told me soccer playoffs were more important than picking your mother up from major surgery. "Mom, that's not fair. It was one weekend." It was 6 weeks, David. 6 weeks of silence while I struggled to recover alone. Did you call even once to check on me? There was a pause. We were busy. I meant to call. You meant to. Well, I meant to keep helping you with your mortgage, but I was too busy healing from surgery by myself. Mom, please, you're being unreasonable. We can work this out. The time to work things out was when I needed help and you were nowhere to be found. Don't call me again. I hung up and immediately blocked his number.
Jennifer called an hour later, crying, "Mom, you got my letter. You can't take away my car. I need it for work." Jennifer, you're 41 years old with a successful career. If you need a car, buy one yourself. But I can't afford the payments on my salary. Then you should have considered that before you decided my surgery recovery was less important than your business conference. Mom, that conference was crucial for my career. And your mother's health should have been crucial for your heart. Apparently it wasn't. Please, Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't there, but taking away my car is extreme. You know what's extreme, Jennifer? Waking up from major surgery and realizing your own children consider you a burden not worth their time. I hung up and blocked her number too. Michael called last and he was sobbing. "Mom, please, you can't do this to us. Rachel's already talking about having to quit her job to watch the kids if we can't afford daycare. We'll lose everything." Michael, I spent 3 days in the hospital alone and 6 weeks recovering alone, and you never once checked on me, your own mother. But now you're worried about losing things. Mom, I wanted to help, but the kids. I raised 3 children while working full-time and taking care of my dying mother-in-law. Don't tell me about how hard it is to balance responsibilities. Please, Mom, we'll do better. We'll visit you more. We'll call more often. Michael, the time for visiting and calling was when I was lying on my bathroom floor after falling, wondering if I'd broken my hip replacement. The time for being a good son was when I couldn't reach my medication and had to choose between pain and risking another fall. You weren't there then, and I don't need you now. Mom, you're destroying our family over one mistake. No, Michael. You destroyed our family when you decided I wasn't worth your time. I'm just making it official. I hung up and blocked his number too. But the calls didn't stop there. Susan called, crying and begging me to reconsider the mortgage situation. Rachel called, hysterical about the daycare payments. Even some of my children's friends called, trying to mediate. I blocked every number. Within 2 weeks, the consequences of my actions were rippling through their lives like a tsunami. David and Susan were forced to put their house on the market immediately. They couldn't qualify for refinancing without my income and credit history. They had to sell quickly and at a loss, moving into a cramped apartment across town. Their children had to change schools, leave their friends, and give up their elaborate extracurricular activities.
Michael and Rachel's daycare bill doubled overnight. Rachel had to quit her job to watch the children, which cut their household income in half. They fell behind on their own mortgage and car payments. Michael started working weekends and taking on freelance projects, which meant he barely saw his children. But the financial devastation was only part of what I had planned. The social consequences were even more satisfying to watch from a distance. David and Susan's neighbors in their fancy subdivision had watched them live beyond their means for years, always wondering how a middle management insurance worker could afford such an expensive house. When the for sale sign went up and they moved out in obvious financial distress, the gossip was vicious. Susan could no longer show her face at the country club or the exclusive boutique where she'd been a regular customer. Jennifer's co-workers were baffled by her sudden lifestyle downgrade. She went from being the fashionable marketing director with the luxury car to someone taking the bus and bringing bag lunches. When people asked what happened, she couldn't explain without admitting she'd been financially dependent on her elderly mother, whom she then abandoned during medical recovery. Michael and Rachel's situation was the most publicly humiliating. They had to pull their children out of expensive activities and programs. Birthday parties had to be canceled. Play dates became awkward when other parents realized they couldn't reciprocate invitations to restaurants or entertainment venues. At church, people stopped including Rachel in the mothers' groups. Everyone knew the story by now, how they'd abandoned me during surgery while spending money I was contributing to their lifestyle. But the most beautiful part of my revenge was watching them try to explain to their own children why their lives had suddenly become so difficult. How do you tell a 14-year-old that they have to quit travel soccer because grandma stopped paying for it after you refused to help her recover from surgery? How do you explain to a 12-year-old why they have to share a bedroom in a small apartment instead of having their own room in a big house? How do you tell 3 young children that they can't go to their nice daycare anymore because daddy and mommy told grandma that her hip surgery wasn't as important as their busy schedule? The kids, of course, started asking to see me. They wanted to know why grandma wasn't at Christmas, why she didn't send birthday cards anymore, why they couldn't visit her house like they used to. My children had to explain to their own children that they had hurt grandma so badly that she didn't want to see any of them anymore. They had to admit to their innocent children that they had been bad sons and daughters. 6 months after my surgery, I received a letter that had been forwarded through my attorney since my children couldn't contact me directly. It was from my oldest grandchild, David's son, Tyler, who was 14. Dear Grandma, I don't understand what happened between you and Dad, but I miss you. I miss coming to your house and hearing your stories. I miss your chocolate chip cookies and the way you always remembered everything important to me. Dad said you're angry because he couldn't help you when you were sick, but he's really sorry now. We all are. Mom cries sometimes when she thinks about you, and Dad gets really quiet when people ask about you. I know I'm just a kid, but I think families should forgive each other. Can't you please forgive us? I promise I'll help take care of you when you get sick again. I'm old enough now to drive you to doctor appointments and help you around the house. I love you, Grandma. Please don't stay mad forever. Tyler. Reading that letter, I cried for the first time since my surgery. Not because I felt guilty about my choices, but because I realized how completely my children had failed to teach their own children about responsibility and consequences. Tyler thought this was about forgiveness. He didn't understand that this wasn't about anger. It was about self-preservation. His father had shown me exactly what kind of man he was when he prioritized a soccer game over his mother's medical emergency. That wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. That was character. And character doesn't change just because consequences finally catch up to you. I wrote Tyler back. Dear Tyler, thank you for your letter. I love you too very much. But you need to understand that this situation isn't about forgiveness. It's about learning that our choices have consequences. When your dad decided the soccer playoffs were more important than helping his mother recover from surgery, he made a choice about what kind of son he wanted to be. When your aunt and uncle made the same choice, they showed me what kind of people they really are. I spent 43 years putting my children's needs before my own. I worked extra jobs to pay for their activities, sacrificed my own wants to give them what they needed, and was always available when they needed support. When I needed them for the first time in decades, they told me I wasn't worth their time. I forgive them for hurting me, Tyler. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to give them another opportunity to show me how little I matter to them. You are a good boy with a kind heart, and I hope you learn from your parents' mistakes. When someone you love needs help, you help them. You don't make excuses or put other things first. You show up. I hope your parents teach you that lesson,
even though they had to learn it the hard way themselves. Love always, Grandma. I never heard from Tyler again, but I heard through mutual friends that my letter had been shared with the whole family and had caused quite a stir. Good. Maybe they were finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what they had done.
A year after my surgery, I was living a completely different life. I had joined a seniors travel group and taken trips to Ireland, Italy, and Alaska. I had made new friends who valued my company and actually wanted to spend time with me. I had started volunteering at a local hospital, helping other elderly patients who were recovering without family support. I had also met someone special. Robert was a 71-year-old widower who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. His 4 children lived across the country but called him every week, visited every few months, and had all flown home to help when he had his knee replacement surgery. I can't imagine what kind of people abandon their parent during medical recovery, he said when I told him my story. My kids would have moved in with me if I'd needed them to. That's because you raised them right, I told him. You taught them that family takes care of family. Robert and I started dating, and 6 months later, he proposed. I said yes, not just because I loved him, but because I finally understood what it felt like to be valued and cherished by someone who put my needs on the same level as his own. We planned a small wedding ceremony at our church. I invited all my old friends, my new friends from the travel group, and the wonderful staff from Dr. Peterson's office who had been so kind during my recovery. I did not invite my children. 2 days before the wedding, I received another forwarded letter, this time from David. Mom, I heard from Mrs. Patterson that you're getting married. I can't believe you would do something so important without even telling your own children. I know you're still angry about the surgery situation, but this has gone on long enough. Susan and the kids miss you terribly. We made a mistake and we're sorry, but you've punished us enough. We lost our house, our savings, our social standing. Isn't that enough revenge for one weekend of bad judgment? I'm asking you, as your son, to please let us be part of your wedding. Let us start over as a family. Let the grandkids have their grandmother back. David. I read that letter twice, then showed it to Robert. 1 weekend of bad judgment, he said, shaking his head. Is that really how he sees abandoning you for 6 weeks while you recovered from major surgery? That's exactly how he sees it. He still doesn't understand that this wasn't about 1 weekend. This was about him showing me that when I needed him most, I simply didn't matter enough for him to rearrange his schedule. Are you going to respond? I think I will, actually. I wrote back, David, you call it 1 weekend of bad judgment. Let me tell you what it really was. It was 3 days in the hospital with no visitors while I watched other patients receive flowers and get well cards from their families. It was 6 weeks of struggling to shower, dress, and feed myself while wondering if I would fall again and how long I might lie on the floor before someone found me. It was realizing that the children I had devoted my life to raising considered my pain and fear less important than a soccer game. It was understanding, finally, that I had raised 3 adults who were capable of abandoning someone they claimed to love when it became inconvenient to care about them. You say, I've punished you enough, but you still don't understand what you did wrong. You think this is about revenge when it's actually about recognizing reality. The reality is that you are not the kind of son who shows up when his mother needs help.
Jennifer is not the kind of daughter who puts family before career advancement. Michael is not the kind of son who makes sacrifices for his mother's well-being. I spent 68 years believing you were different than you actually are. The surgery recovery taught me the truth about who you really are. I'm not punishing you for that truth. I'm just finally accepting it and living accordingly. I hope someday you understand the difference. Mom. My wedding day was beautiful. I wore a soft blue dress that brought out my eyes, and Robert looked handsome in his navy suit. Our families consisted of people who had chosen to love and support us, rather than people who felt obligated to tolerate us. During our vows, Robert promised to be there for me in sickness and in health, and I knew he meant it because he had already proven it during his own medical challenges. I promised the same to him, and I meant it because I had learned what it was like to face health crises alone and would never let someone I loved go through that. After the ceremony, Mrs. Patterson hugged me and whispered, "Margaret, I'm so happy you found someone who appreciates what a treasure you are." "Thank you," I said. It took me 68 years to learn that I deserved better than being treated like a burden. Robert and I honeymooned in Hawaii, the same destination my grandchildren had lied about taking me to years before their betrayal. We stayed in a beautiful resort, took sunset walks on the beach, and I finally got to experience the kind of family vacation I had always dreamed of with someone who actually wanted to be there with me. While we were there, I got a call from Harold, my attorney. My children had attempted to contest my will, claiming I was mentally incompetent when I made the changes. Harold was calling to tell me that their challenge had been completely unsuccessful. "Margaret, the court reviewed all the documentation we provided about your mental state, your medical records, and the detailed explanations you gave for your decisions. The judge was actually quite harsh with your children's attorney. He said it was clear that you were completely competent and that your decisions were reasonable responses to their behavior." "What happens now?" "Now they pay their own legal fees for filing a frivolous lawsuit, and your will stands exactly as you wrote it. They can't challenge it again." That evening, as Robert and I watched the sunset from our hotel balcony, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. I wasn't angry anymore, wasn't hurt anymore, wasn't disappointed anymore. I had simply moved on to a life where I was valued and loved properly.
"Any regrets?" Robert asked, taking my hand. "About my children? No. I gave them every opportunity to be the kind of people I raised them to be. They chose differently. I can't regret protecting myself from their choices." "What about the grandchildren?" That was harder to answer. I did miss Tyler, Madison, Emma, and little Jake. I missed watching them grow up, missed being part of their lives. But I also knew that staying connected to them meant staying connected to their parents, and I simply couldn't risk being hurt again. "I hope someday they'll understand why I had to step away," I said finally. "And I hope their parents teach them better lessons about family loyalty than they learned themselves." 2 years after my surgery, 3 years into my marriage with Robert, I received news that changed everything, but not in the way my children hoped. Jennifer had been diagnosed with breast cancer. The news came through Mrs. Patterson, who had heard it from someone at church. Jennifer was facing a mastectomy and months of chemotherapy. She was scared, alone, and, according to the gossip chain, had specifically asked people to reach out to me on her behalf.
I felt a moment of the old maternal instinct, the urge to rush to my child's side, to take care of her, to set aside my own hurt for her medical needs. But then I remembered lying in my own hospital bed, calling her for help, and being told that her business conference was more important than my recovery. I remembered the weeks of pain and fear I had endured alone while she was too busy to check on me even once. I remembered her telling me that she didn't like medical situations because blood and bandages made her queasy. Robert found me sitting quietly in our kitchen, staring at the phone number Reese's Patterson had given me for Jennifer's oncologist. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. "I'm thinking about what kind of person I want to be, and what kind of person my daughter taught me she was." "Do you want to call her?" "Part of me does, but the part of me that remembers being abandoned during my own medical crisis knows better." I didn't call Jennifer. I didn't visit her. I didn't send flowers or cards or offers of help. I did exactly what she had done to me. I continued living my life as if her medical emergency was not my responsibility. I heard through the community gossip network how difficult her treatment was. She had to take extended leave from work. She couldn't afford a house cleaner or meal delivery service. She was too sick from chemotherapy to take care of basic household tasks. Her hair fell out, and she was too weak to shop for wigs or scarves. She was going through exactly what I had gone through, except her condition was more serious and her treatment was longer and more debilitating. And just like I had been, she was going through it alone. David and Michael did slightly better for Jennifer than they had done for me. They visited her in the hospital a few times and brought her some groceries occasionally. But they were still too busy with their own lives to provide the kind of consistent, reliable support that someone going through cancer treatment really needs. 6 months into Jennifer's treatment, I received a call from someone I didn't expect. Tyler, my oldest grandchild, who was now 16. "Grandma, I know probably you don't want to talk to me, but I got your number from Mrs. Patterson. I need to tell you something." "Hello, Tyler. How are you?" I'm really confused, Grandma, and I think I owe you an apology." "Oh?" "Aunt Jennifer is really sick. She has cancer, and she's been asking everyone to call you and ask you to help her. But Dad and Uncle Michael keep saying you're being cruel and heartless for not helping your own daughter when she's dying." I was quiet, letting him process his thoughts. But then I remembered what happened when you had your surgery, and I started thinking about how Dad and Uncle Michael and Aunt Jennifer treated you then. And I realized they're doing the same thing to Aunt Jennifer that they did to you, aren't they? "What do you mean, Tyler?" "They visit her sometimes and they act like they're being really good brothers, but she needs help every day. She needs someone to drive her to treatments, to bring her meals, to help her clean her house, to just sit with her when she's scared. And they're not doing that. They're doing the bare minimum and then going back to their own lives." "And how does that make you feel?" "It makes me realize that you weren't being mean when you cut us off. You were protecting yourself from people who don't really know how to love anyone except themselves." I felt tears coming to my eyes. "Tyler, that's a very mature understanding of a complicated situation." "Tyler, I'm old enough to drive now, and I've been thinking, would it be okay if I came to visit you sometime? Not because I want anything, and not to try to get you to forgive Dad or anything like that. I miss you, and I think I finally understand why you had to stay away from us." "Tyler, I would love to see you, but you need to understand that having a relationship with me might make things difficult with your parents." "I know, but I've been watching how they treat people they're supposed to love, and I don't want to be like that. I want to learn how to be better." Tyler started visiting me and Robert every few weeks. He was a thoughtful, intelligent young man who had learned some hard lessons about family loyalty by watching his father's failures.
He never asked me to reconcile with his parents, never tried to guilt me into helping with Jennifer's situation, never made excuses for their behavior. Instead, he helped me with yard work, listened to my stories about his grandfather, played chess with Robert, and slowly rebuilt the kind of loving grandparent-grandchild relationship that his parents had destroyed with their selfishness.
Through Tyler, I learned that Jennifer's cancer treatment was successful, but that the experience had changed her significantly. She had apparently become quite bitter about the lack of family support during her illness and was now estranged from David and Michael as well. She keeps saying that she finally understands what you went through, Tyler told me. She says she never realized how alone you must have felt until she felt that alone herself. That's unfortunate, I said. I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone, even her. Do you think you'll ever forgive them, Grandma? Tyler, I forgave them years ago. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending someone didn't hurt you. It means letting go of the anger so it doesn't poison your own life. I'm not angry at your father or your aunt or your uncle anymore, but I also don't trust them not to hurt me again. I think I understand. By the time Tyler graduated high school, he had become like a real grandson to me and Robert. We attended his graduation ceremony, helped him pick out a college, and even contributed to his tuition, not as a family obligation, but as a gift to a young man we genuinely cared about and who cared about us in return. David was at the graduation ceremony, of course, and he saw us there. He looked older, more worn down by the years of consequences that had followed his choices. He approached us hesitantly after the ceremony. Mom, Robert, thank you for coming. It means a lot to Tyler. Tyler is a fine young man, Robert said diplomatically. You should be proud of him. I am, and I owe you both an apology, especially you, Mom. I know I hurt you badly, and I know I haven't been the son you deserved. I understand now why you had to cut us off. I looked at David, this middle-aged man who looked so much like his father, and I felt neither anger nor love, just a kind of sad recognition of what might have been. David, I hope you've learned to be there for the people who need you. I have, or I'm trying to. It's been a hard few years, learning how to actually show up for people instead of just making excuses. That's good. Everyone deserves to have people in their lives who will show up when it matters. Mom, is there any chance? Could we maybe start over? I know I don't deserve it, but David, starting over would require me to trust you not to hurt me again, and I'm not willing to risk that. I'm 71 years old, and I finally learned to protect myself from people who don't value me properly. But I do value you. You've learned because you faced consequences. That's not the same as genuinely valuing someone. If Tyler ever needs help, I'll be there for him, because he's shown me who he is through his actions, not his words. But you showed me who you are when I needed you most, and words don't change that. David's eyes filled with tears. So there's really no way back? There's no way back to the relationship we had before, because that relationship was based on me believing you were someone you weren't. But there could be a different relationship, a distant, polite one, where we acknowledge each other at family events and are civil, but not close. Is that what you want? David, what I wanted was a son who would pick up his mother from the hospital after surgery. What I got was a son who told me soccer practice was more important. I've adjusted my expectations accordingly. I could see that my words hurt him, but I also could see that he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it's still the truth. Over the next few years, Tyler kept us updated on his parents and aunt and uncle. David and Susan had eventually stabilized financially, but they lived much more modestly and never regained the social status they had lost. Jennifer had survived her cancer, but remained bitter and isolated,
having learned too late what it felt like to need family support and not receive it. Michael and Rachel had struggled for years with the financial impact of losing my support, and their marriage had been strained by the stress. All three of my children had been forced to confront the reality that their choices had consequences, and that treating people badly, even people who love you unconditionally, eventually results in losing those people entirely. Tyler went to college, studied business, and stayed in regular contact with Robert and me. He brought his girlfriend to meet us, asked for our advice about career decisions, and even maintained the kind of loving, respectful relationship with us that his father had thrown away. When Tyler got engaged, he asked if we would attend his wedding. We said yes, knowing that David, Jennifer, and Michael would be there, but feeling confident that we could handle a few hours of polite distance for Tyler's sake. The wedding was beautiful, and Tyler's bride was a lovely young woman who clearly adored him. During his speech at the reception, Tyler thanked his parents for raising him, but he also said something that surprised everyone. I also want to thank my grandma Margaret and step-grandpa Robert for teaching me what it really means to show up for the people you love. They've been there for me consistently, reliably, and unconditionally for the past 6 years, and they've shown me what real family loyalty looks like. I saw David's face during that speech, and I could see that he understood exactly what Tyler was saying and what he wasn't saying. After the reception, Jennifer approached me. She looked older, frailer than her 47 years, changed by her battle with cancer and the loneliness that had followed. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I wanted to tell you that I finally understand what I did to you. Going through cancer treatment alone taught me what you must have felt like during your surgery recovery. I'm glad your treatment was successful. I know it's too late to apologize and mean anything, but I am sorry. I was selfish and thoughtless, and I took you for granted. I thought you would always be there no matter how badly we treated you."
I was there for 41 years, Jennifer. I was there for every birthday, every heartbreak, every achievement, every crisis. I was there when you needed help with school, when you were struggling to start your career, when you needed financial support. I was always there until the one time I needed you and you weren't. I know, and I lost the best mother anyone could ask for because I was too self-centered to see what I had. You didn't lose me because you were self-centered, Jennifer. You lost me because you showed me that my pain and fear didn't matter to you as much as your convenience. That's not selfishness, that's cruelty. Jennifer started crying. Is there any way to earn your forgiveness? Jennifer, I forgave you years ago for my own peace of mind, but forgiveness doesn't mean I'm willing to be hurt by you again. You taught me who you really are when the stakes were high, and I believe you. People can change. They can, but they usually don't, not in any fundamental way. And I'm too old to gamble my emotional well-being on the possibility that you might be the exception. As Robert and I drove home from Tyler's wedding, I reflected on how different my life had become from what I had expected at 68. I had thought I would spend my golden years being a devoted grandmother, helping with babysitting, hosting family holidays, being the matriarch of a large, loving family. Instead, I had learned that some families are held together by habit and obligation rather than genuine love and respect. I had learned that sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of people who don't value you properly, even when those people are your own children. I had also learned that it's possible to build a new family out of people who choose to love and support you. Robert's children had welcomed me warmly into their family. Tyler had chosen to maintain a relationship with me despite the difficulties it created with his father. I had friends from my travel group, my volunteer work, and my church who cared about my well-being and enjoyed my company. "Any regrets?" Robert asked as we pulled into our driveway. About cutting off my children? No. About the years I spent enabling their selfishness instead of teaching them to be better people? Yes.
I think I did them a disservice by always putting their needs first and never expecting them to consider mine. You loved them the best way you knew how. I did. But I think love without boundaries and expectations isn't really love. It's just indulgence. And indulgent love creates selfish people who don't know how to love others properly. Well, Tyler turned out differently. Tyler learned from watching his father's mistakes. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices so they can learn from them. Even when it hurts to watch, especially when it hurts to watch. Pain is often the only teacher that gets through to people who think they can treat others badly without consequences. As I write this story, I'm 74 years old. It's been 6 years since my hip replacement surgery, 6 years since I learned what my children really thought of me when I inconvenienced their schedules. I live in a beautiful house with a man who adores me and treats me like I'm precious. I travel, I volunteer, I have friends who value my company. I have a relationship with one grandchild who chose to be in my life because he wanted to be, not because he felt obligated. My children still live with the consequences of their choices. David and Susan's marriage survived, but they never recovered the lifestyle they had when I was subsidizing it. Jennifer recovered from her cancer, but remains isolated, having learned too late what it feels like to need family support and not receive it. Michael and Rachel struggled for years financially and are only now beginning to stabilize. All three of them now understand what they lost when they decided that soccer games and business conferences and busy schedules were more important than their mother's medical recovery. They understand that some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies, that some trust can't be rebuilt once it's broken. They also understand that their mother wasn't the helpless, dependent old lady they thought they could manipulate and discard. I was a woman with resources, connections, intelligence, and the strength to rebuild her life without people who didn't value her properly. Some people think I was too harsh, that families should forgive and forget no matter what. But I disagree. I think families should treat family with love and respect, and when they don't, there should be consequences. I think people who abandon their elderly parents during medical emergencies should learn what it feels like to lose that parent entirely. I think adults who take their mother's financial support for granted while treating her like a burden should learn what it's like to manage their responsibilities without that support. I think children who mock their mother's loneliness and grief should learn what real loneliness feels like. And I think sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the full consequences of their choices, even when it hurts your heart to watch. My children learned all of these lessons, not because I was cruel, but because I finally stopped protecting them from the results of their own behavior. The morning after my surgery, when I couldn't reach the kettle and had to sit on a stool to breathe through the pain, I thought I was just a sick old woman whose children didn't care about me. Now I know I was a strong woman who was about to discover just how much she was worth and just how much power she had to change her life when people didn't treat her with the respect she deserved. They said, "We'd love to help, Mom, but the kids have soccer." But what they really said was, "You don't matter enough to us to rearrange our schedules." So I rearranged my entire life to show them exactly what that choice cost them. And I've never regretted it for a single day.